Mischief rule. First, we will try to understand the concept of mischief rule, then we will see the theory portion. Suppose there is an act, there is a law in which there is a word which has more than one meaning. Suppose this word has more than one meaning, that is meaning 1, meaning 2, meaning 3, meaning 4. Then out of these meanings, which one will be used for this word? For this, we have to see the intention of the legislators who made this law. That is, for what purpose they made this law. The purpose of any law is to suppress any mischief and to advance remedy for it. That is, to suppress any mischief, to remove any defect, or to end any evil, and to advance remedy for it. That is, to provide solution for it. Any meaning which suppresses the mischief and advances remedy for it will be used for that word. Suppose here meaning 3 suppresses the mischief, it ends any evil or removes any defect and provides solution for it, that is it advances the remedy. Then meaning 3 will be used for that word according to mischief rule. For example, a person was doing adulteration in Supari. When his case went to the court, he said that Supari does not come under the category of food under Food Adulteration Act, so he cannot be tried under Food Adulteration Act. So the court looked at the purpose of Food Adulteration Act. The purpose of Food Adulteration Act is to stop adulteration in food. So to fulfill this purpose, the court gave a meaning to food. The meaning was anything which is consumed by mouth or which is consumed orally is known as food. So as Supari is also consumed by mouth, it is consumed orally, so it comes under the category of food. So doing adulteration in Supari will be considered a crime and the person will be tried under Food Adulteration Act. So this was the example of mischief rule. While applying the mischief rule, the courts have to consider some points. These are: what was the old law, what was the defect in that law, what was the remedy provided for that defect, and what was the reason for that remedy. These points should be considered while applying the mischief rule. Now let us see the theory portion. Mischief rule is also known as Hayden's rule or purposive construction. Explanation of mischief rule. It is the oldest of the rules of interpretation. In case of ambiguity in the wording of a statute, it becomes more difficult to use either literal or golden rule. In that situation, it is open to the courts to apply the mischief rule. To interpret the ambiguity, the court look at the rationale or reason of the legislation. Courts assume that the underlying reason why Parliament legislated is more important than the words. So they adopt a more purposive approach to interpretation. It is purposive, not purpose. That is, they aim to suppress the mischief which the statute is seeking to redress and advance the remedy. While applying the mischief rule, the courts will consider the following points. They are: what was the law before making of the act? What was the defect in that law? What was the remedy which the parliament introduced for the defect? And the actual reason for the remedy. These points should be considered while applying the mischief rule. In simple words, when there is ambiguity in the words of a statute, that is, if more than one meaning is possible, then the courts should give a meaning which will suppress the mischief and advance the remedy. The court, while applying this principle or applying this rule, tries to find out the real intention or purpose of the legislators behind the enactment. Names of mischief rule. This rule was laid down in Hayden's case in 1584. Therefore, it is known as Hayden's rule. This rule lays emphasis on advancing the purpose and object of the statute. Therefore, it is also known as purposive construction. Example of mischief rule. There is example of Smith versus Hughes case. In this case, under Street Offences Act 1959, it was a crime for prostitutes to loiter or solicit on the street for the purpose of prostitution. The defendants, who were prostitutes, they were calling men in the street from their balconies and by tapping windows. They argued that as they were not themselves in the street, they fell outside the definition. The judge said it matters little whether the prostitute is soliciting while in the street or on balcony or at window. In each case, solicitation is projected to and addressed to somebody walking in the street, and the defendant were found guilty. So what happened in this case was, under Street Offences Act, it was a crime if someone solicits or calls somebody for the purpose of prostitution, anybody who is walking on the street. So what the prostitutes did, instead of being present at the in the street, they tried to solicit or call from their balconies. They they argued in their defense that as they themselves were not in the street, so they do not come under this act. The judge said it matters little that whether you are present in the street or in the balcony. What matters is the person walking in the street is being solicited. So the defendants, that is the prostitutes, they were found guilty. The judges looked at the purpose of the act. The purpose of this act was to prevent solicitation for prostitution in the streets. So according to the purpose, the judges said that anyone who is being solicited in the street, whether from the street or from balconies, it will be a crime. So the judges fulfilled the purpose of this act. For case law, you can write Pyarilal versus Ramchandra. It is the case of Supari, which we have already discussed. Accused was charged with using artificial sweetener in Supari for sweetening. He was doing adulteration in Supari. The accused argued that Supari does not come under the category of food under Food Adulteration Act 1954. The court said that dictionary meaning is not always the correct meaning and applied the mischief rule, and held that word food is consumable by mouth or orally. Anything which is consumed by mouth or orally will be considered as food. So Supari comes into the category of food in the act, as Supari is also consumed by mouth. So here also the court fulfilled the purpose of the act. Another case law is Regional Provident Fund Commissioner versus Sri Krishna Manufacturing Company. In this case, a factory had 4 units, one paddy mill, another one flour mill, sawmill, and copper sheet unit. Together, the number of employees were more than 50. The Regional Provident Fund Commissioner thereby directed the factory to give benefits to employees according to Employees Provident Fund Act 1952. The person concerned segregated the entire factory into 4 units, wherein the number of employees in each unit had fallen below 50, so the provision do not apply on him. The court held that mischief rule is to be applied and all 4 units must be taken to be one industry. Therefore, Employees Provident Fund Act will be applicable. What happened in this case was, there was a factory, it had 4 units. Together the number of employees in all units, the total was more than 50. And if there are more than 50 employees, in that case, Employees Provident Fund Act will apply on that factory and benefits have to be given to the employees. So what the owner or person concerned did, he segregated all the units That is, he made them separate. So suppose in this unit there were 10 employees, in this 10, in this 15, in this 15. So in each unit they became less than 50. So he said that as these units are separate and the employees in them are less than 50, so Employees Provident Fund Act will not apply on these units. But the court looked at the purpose of this act. The purpose of this act was to give benefits to the employees. So the what the court said was, he said that mischief rule will be applied and all these four units will be taken together as one industry, and Employees Provident Fund Act will be applicable on it. The purpose of the act will be fulfilled. What are the advantages of mischief rule? It closes loopholes in the law. It allows the law to develop and adapt to the changing needs. What are the disadvantages of mischief rule? It gives judges a law-making rule, thereby infringing upon the separation of powers. The role of law-making is of parliament. The parliament makes the law, but here in certain way judges are making law, therefore it is infringing upon the separation of powers. The judges can bring their own views and prejudices to a case. It creates a crime after the event, thus infringing the rule of law. These were the disadvantages of mischief rule. So this was your mischief rule. For full course of interpretation of statutes, you can visit the website www.lockup.com. In full course, you will get all the videos of every topic plus the PDF file of the notes of interpretation of statutes.